Hello and welcome to this presentation or this lecture on forestry and resource management. Resource management is the practice of harvesting potentially renewable resources in ways that do not deplete them. We must carefully manage the limited resources we take from the natural world, and managers make those decisions and help provide guidance. The managers are influenced by political, economic, and social factors. Forestry is the profession of managing forests, balancing the central importance of forests as ecosystems with the demand for wood products. Resource managers follow several strategies. First here is maximum sustainable yield. Managers have tried to achieve maximum sustainable yield, which is the maximum amount of resource extraction possible while not depleting the resource from one harvest to the next. If you look at the graph, populations grow most rapidly at an intermediate size. So managers try to keep the population size at half of its carrying capacity, and so you get the fastest growth in that area. And so as you can see, or put it together from that managed populations are well below what they naturally would be, well below their carrying capacity. Today, many managers pursue ecosystem-based management. Ecosystem-based management attempts to manage the harvesting of resources in ways that minimize impacts on the communities, the ecological communities, and processes that provide the resource. It is challenging for managers to determine how to implement this type of management, as ecosystems are complex and our understanding of ecosystems and how they operate is limited. Adaptive management involves systematically testing different management approaches with the aim of improving methods as the time goes on, including changing practices in midstream if necessary. This is a fusion of science and management. The 1994 Northwest Forest Plan resolved disputes between loggers and preservationists over the remaining old-growth temperate rainforests in Oregon, Washington, and California by allowing limited logging, protecting species and ecosystems, and providing science-guided management. Now a little discussion of forestry and forests. Forests cover about 30% of the Earth's land surface, as you can see from this image. Forests have both an economic and ecological value, and forests are ecologically valuable, but forest products are economically valued. Forests are one of the richest ecosystems for biodiversity due to their structural complexity, and forests also provide many ecosystem services, such as stabilizing soil and preventing erosion, slowing runoff, lessening flooding, purifying water, and storing carbon, releasing oxygen, and moderating climate. Forests also have economic value. Fuel, shelter, transportation, and paper have helped society achieve a high standard of living. Here's a little bit of some of the terms used in forestry. The upper portion of the trees, the highest trees there, that kind of form a connected area in the branches that kind of keeps the shade from making it down low. It's called the canopy. Below that is the subcanopy, and underneath that is the understory, where some of the shrub and shrubs and small trees are going to be in that shrub layer, and then the forest floor at the bottom. Of course, the soil, and at the top of the soil in many forests you'll have leaf litter, and some different kinds of ground cover. Some forests have a lot of different mosses and epiphytes. Plants that grow on other plants are epiphytes. The roots are part of the forest, so a subterranean, subsoil piece. And dead snags and fallen logs are also important parts of the forest. And you can see that gap there, that tree fall gap. That's a gap in the canopy, as there's been some trees that have gone down. It's by natural means. Demand for wood leads to deforestation. Deforestation is the clearing and loss of forests, and it alters landscapes and ecosystems and degrades the soil. It causes species decline and extinction and adds carbon dioxide to the air. We're losing about 7.3 million hectares or 18 million acres globally each year. The areas in Africa and Latin America are areas that have the fastest rate today of deforestation. Deforestation in America and Canada propelled the westward expansion and growth of these countries. The eastern deciduous forests were the first to be logged for farms and to build cities, and the timber companies then moved south and west. In the south, vast pine and bottomland hardwood forests were converted to pine plantations, and in the west, the continent's biggest trees were cut in the Rocky, Sierra Nevada, and Cascade Mountains in the Pacific Northwest. So the loggers moved westward and southward, searching for large trees. We use the term primary forest to talk about natural forest that's been uncut by people. And you can see the difference between year 1620 and 1920 as far as how much primary forest was left. Second growth trees that sprouted after old growth timber has been cut, are the more common types of forest now. We have enacted a lot of different types of forest protection. One of the main ones that grew out of sort of Roosevelt and Gifford Pinchot's work is the U.S. National Forest System, a system of forest reserves in public lands. The U.S. National Forest System is charged with growing trees, producing timber, protecting watersheds, and ensuring future timber supplies. So a sustainable type of forestry, kind of following that conservation ethic. It resulted from the depletion of U.S. forests and the fear of a timber famine. There's 191 million acres in the U.S. National Forest System, 8% of the U.S. land base. And it's the job of the U.S. Forest Service to manage the U.S. National Forest System. There are other land agencies also that are involved in forest management and natural resource management that are federal agencies, and you can see some of them on this GIS map. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, the Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service, and the National Park Service. Timber harvest. Timber is extracted from public and private land, and currently most U.S. timber is harvested from private land, as you can see from the graph. And private companies also extract timber from publicly held national forests. The Forest Service employees plan and manage timber sales, and they build the roads, and the companies log and sell the timber for profit. There are several different types of methods for harvesting timber, and I'll just talk about a couple of them here. One of them is clear cuts, and a clear cut is where all the trees in the area are cut. This is very cost efficient. It can have severe impact on forest ecosystems, although it may mimic some natural forms of disturbance, right? A fire or a big windstorm. It does destroy the entire community and causes some soil erosion. There is some forest types that this works really well because the forest will come back on its own and regenerate. Think of an aspen forest. The public can be outraged by this type of harvesting, and it can cause discussion, I guess. Other methods of harvest. The U.S. timber industry focuses on production in southern states from tree plantations of a single species. This is very similar to the kind of a plantation we have here on campus of the red pines. These are even age stands, meaning that all the trees are planted at the same time, and so they're all the same age. And they have a rotation time, so they let them grow for a certain amount of time, and then they harvest them. Really, these plantations are more of a crop than a forest. There are some ways to grow trees, to grow forest, I guess, for harvest, and one of the things you'd want to do there is try to get uneven age stands where you have both a mix of ages and preferably species of trees, and that will make it look more similar to more similar to a natural forest. Here's a graph that talks about that. Clear cutting on your left side there, right, where you clear all the trees out, and then a couple of methods that you hear about that kind of get at the uneven age stands, right? Seed tree or shelterwood tree systems where you leave certain trees in, and those act as seed producers for the next generation, or they act as a shelter if the trees need shade to compete. And then you have some sort of a selective system where you pick out some trees and leave others in place. Fire policy has stirred a lot of controversy, and for over 100 years, the Forest Service suppressed all fires. So that was the idea, was to, for the first century of their involvement, was to suppress fire whenever and wherever it had broken out. But we know that ecosystems depend on fires, and we also know that fire suppression allows woody accumulation, so you get a larger fuel load and creates these catastrophic fires. Now, one of the problems with allowing fires to burn is that we have encroached on so much wild area with our housing development because we want to live in these kind of places, and of course that causes issues when the forest starts to burn. An important new component to management of forests by the Forest Service is the idea of prescribed or controlled burns, and this of course has been used for millennia by the people who lived on the land to control what grew there and to keep the forest healthy. Prescribed or controlled burns are burning of areas of forest under carefully controlled conditions, and you're trying to get rid of that fuel load, get those nutrients back into the soil, and not burn the entire forest down, right? So there is some public misunderstanding and political interference to this management method or technique. The Healthy Forest Restoration Act of 2003 promotes the removal of small trees, underbrush, and dead trees from forest areas from the U.S. forest system, and this was passed in response to these catastrophic fires that we hear about every year in near populated areas, right? And this can be good, but it can also hinder the recovery of the forest. This process of salvage logging, right, where you physically remove small trees, underbrush, and dead trees, and it's done by the timber companies. It seems really logical, but it can be really destructive Snags, those standing dead trees, provide very important and vital nesting cavities for countless animals. And removing timber from recently burned areas increases erosion and causes soil damage. It also promotes future fires and may impede forest regeneration. Sustainable forestry is gaining ground. Several organizations examine timber company practices and offer sustainable forestry certification to products produced using sustainable methods. One of those is the Forest Stewardship Council. They'll certify products produced using methods judged to be sustainable, so harvest in a sustainable way. And then the consumers now have demanded that have created demand for sustainable wood, and you see companies like Home Depot selling sustainable wood. And as you know, consumer choice in the marketplace can be a powerful driver for good resource management and, in this case, good forestry practices. All right, thanks for listening to this lecture on natural resources management and forestry. Let me know if you have any questions.